been looking forward to this since my cousin Gene told me about this.
Yes. So, let's talk about that real quick. What is it like when you and Gene hang out together?
Well, you know, he's a lot younger than me, Gene. He's my son's age. He's actually a year younger than my son. So it was crazy because when I know him since he's born. Of course, he's my. But when I went away in the last time I went to prison in '96, he was a kid. He was 12. You know, and then when I came out in '04, like he was hanging out with the Banana family, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I saw him in the salon and he like paid for my manicure. You know, it was like, it was kind of weird, but and I heard all these things about him when I was away, like, oh, your cousin Gene's doing stick-ups, your cousin Gene's doing this. And so it was a change. Yeah, it was a change.
There's a huge jump from when you saw him last.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Did you have to talk to him a little bit about slowing down, or
not then. I didn't talk to him at that point because I didn't really, because he was still in the life. So, you know, so the way he was behaving in the life was okay. You know, when he got out of the life and he started getting himself jammed up, that's when I started talking to him more about, you know, listen, calm down, let it go, you know, watch what you're doing, you know, you don't have to do that anymore. But when he was in the life, not really. No, I let him run, let him do his thing, yeah.
You guys were both kind of in the life at the same time for a period of time, correct?
Yeah, well, I was in prison. When he got into the life, I was in prison. I was in federal prison. And when I came out, so my father had passed away in '99. Mm-hmm. When my father passed away, Gene gravitated towards Vinny Asara. If I was never in prison, Gene probably would have been with us.
Right.
He wouldn't have been with the Bananas. He would have, you know, because we were blood cousins.
Right.
Well, when my father died and I was in prison, he was friends with Ronnie G, so he gravitated towards that family.
Right.
And Vinny knew where he came from. Vinny knew his pedigree. Vinny knew his grandfather, my Uncle Junior. Vinny even knew my mother. Vinny, as I went to grammar school with my mother.
Oh, wow.
So there was a connection there, so Vinny sort of took him under his wing.
Okay. But you guys were on the street at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever like hang out or anything like that, even though you're in different crews?
Not really. Not in the street, but we hung out naturally at family birthdays and weddings and funerals, you know, and stuff. But we never like ran the streets together.
Yeah. So what do you guys like talk about then? Say you guys are two different, you know, families, right? Doing two different things. Like what are two cousins that are in different...
Talk about what he's doing, what I'm doing, you know, talked about crimes, talked about the family, talked about his grandfather, because his grandfather was a character. My Uncle Junior was like, he was a character, you know, and he was tight with Gene, and, you know, he got arrested a few times with Gene, you know, so we talked about that, you know, and we talked about just normal stuff. Right?
Yes, that you had officially decided to get involved in life when you were 16. Correct?
Yes.
Your father had tapped his fingers on the table.
Yes.
And he said, you know, when you decide to go into this life, jail is going to come with it.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
Now, how at 16 years old, you just wanted to just do what your dad, because you saw the money, right? Your uncle and your dad, correct?
Yes.
But you didn't know what it fully entailed, though, right? You just saw them that making money. And
I knew it. By then, I knew that I wanted the respect he had. I wanted the power he had. Like, he started taking me around him. Like, I knew the respect he got. Like, I always knew since I was a little kid, something was different about him. Because when I was a little kid and we went somewhere, when he walked in the room, the atmosphere changed. And you could feel it. Even as a young kid, I felt the atmosphere change, how people catered to him and how he was waited on. And I knew that wasn't happening even with my own uncles or my friends' fathers. You know, when I would travel with them, go on vacation, I used to go on vacation with friends of mine with their families, and their families weren't treated like my family. Like when we went to a restaurant and there was a line waiting for a table, like we never waited for a table. But if I went to a restaurant with you and your family, we would have to wait for a table. So I always knew there was something different, but I didn't know what. Like I just never knew what, but I knew. And even when I went to school, like they would ask me what your father does for a living, and I would go home and say, Dad, the teacher wants to know what you do for a living. He would tell them I work in a dry cleaner. And I knew that wasn't true, but I would roll with it. I would go to school the next day and go, my father works in a dry cleaner. As I got older and I was in my neighborhood and I would walk to the corner, people would go, that's Fat Andy's son. And they would point me out, and I started getting treated differently. I wanted more of that. It was like a drug.
Right.
I wanted more.
For people that aren't aware, it's like being, like a good analogy I would say is like being like a celebrity or like a rock star, or, you know, in your area or in New York, right? Like you get treated like a celebrity.
Definitely. We got treated differently We did what we wanted. Like even when I was 17, I would go in bars and drink. People, they knew I was 17, but I was Fat Andy's son. If it was okay for him, it was okay with them. I would go in bars and drink. So, and I started getting in trouble in school. And at 16, I got suspended. And that's when I had that conversation. So my father, he didn't know how to really reprimand me because my grandfather died when my father was 6. So he didn't have a father. He was raised by my grandmother, who never remarried. You know, she had 8 kids. My father was the youngest of 8. So he didn't really know how to reprimand. Like, he was this big gangster, but he was like a teddy bear at home. You know, like, he didn't never hit us. And he used to tell me, if I hit you, I'll kill you. That's why I don't hit you. You know, once in a while, he would grab me and shake me a little, but that was it. So when I got thrown out of school, he stopped talking to me. That was his punishment. And I waited a few weeks, and then I called my uncle up, his older brother, because there was a big age difference between my uncle Frank and my father. He was the oldest brother, and my father was the youngest, so there was like almost a 20-year age gap. And he came over, and, you know, we had a sit down, and my uncle said, you know, he's like us, put him to work. And I decided, and my father says, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to work for you. And he told me, well, if you work for me, going to jail is all part of the job. And by that time, I was so enmeshed in that life, like because I was born into it. Like, that's all I knew my whole life. His friends, his, you know, running around with him. So by that point, I was already all in. And I just said, that's fine. And then the next day, he put me to work.
Even that young, though, it's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, because at 16, it's like you already knew what you wanted, though. Right?
Yeah. You know, it was a different time back then. Like, I look at 16-year-old kids today, and I think of myself at 16. I was 16 in age, but not in my head.
Right.
Like, you know, even when I look at my own children, like my daughter is 30. You know, when I was 30, I was already married and had a child. Like, she's my little girl. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I was from a different generation than today. You know,
was there ever a time besides, okay, you're like, I want to go in this life. I see it. I see, you know, how people are treated, the fancy things of that nature. Was there ever a time in your life when you were coming up like, yeah, I want to be something else? Or was it kind of always?
Not at that point. No, not at that point. At that point, I wanted all in. Later on, as I got older and I started doing some jail time and things started to change, then you know, but not when I first got into it. No, I was all in. I was all in. I wanted to become made. I lost my own identity. I wanted in. Like, my father tried to discourage me, so I tell this story a lot. My father took me out with him on a Friday night to this bar in Brooklyn called the 5 O'Clock Lounge, I believe it was called. And we walked in. It was a Friday night, and the bar was jumping, party. The jukebox was playing. I mean, it was jumping. And we walked in, and the bartender, of course, knew my father and got us a drink. And we're at the bar. People are coming, hey, Andy, what's going on? And talking. And then a while later, my father says, you notice anything? And I look around, I go, no, why? He goes, you notice a lot of people left? And I go, yeah, a lot of people did clear out a little bit. I said, he goes, you know why? I go, no, I don't know why. He goes, because I'm here. He says, because I'm here, and they don't know if I'm going to smack somebody, hit somebody, abuse somebody. So they hello and goodbye me, and they leave. He said, is that how you want to live? I was thrilled. I said,
yeah,
I said, yes, of course. Fuck yeah. I said, yeah. You know, I was psyched. Like, I said, yeah. You know, like, it was the complete opposite effect that he thought it was going to have. Like, he was trying to discourage me. Then I was really all in. And then, you know, like you said, you know, like now I'm 17, 18, I'm going to the Copacabana, like on Goodfellas, I'm going in through the basement, up through the kitchen. I'm dating, I'm 17 years old, I'm making $100 a day. You know how much money $100 a day was in 1970? A lot of money.